And after a nice couple month hiatus, we're back for episode number 3. Trial run 2 here because my computer decided to shit the bed on the audio for a little bit there, but it's running now. And we got video.
We're live.
And we have some video this time, so we'll really see how this goes. We're going to test out the video part of the podcast. I think it's, an important part of podcasting.
Trying to make ourselves a little more legit.
Yeah, we're getting there. Baby steps.
Gotta get rid of the Yankees hat.
Hey, let me tell you, this Yankee
I got a
hat
real
is
hat for you.
that's a piece of shit. You can leave that over there, right? They got lucky today.
It's a real hat.
They're a bullshit franchise. It's only been good within the last 20 years.
Let's not bore them to death with this stuff already, all right? We just started here. Jesus. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, my God. Don't apologize.
Yeah, so
Greatness.
We haven't been on in a few months. Had some technical difficulties for a little while.
Which we believe has been cleared up, but I guess this is the real test. We'll see how it goes, but hopefully now the technical... I thought these mics were broken, and it sounds like from what I was reading on the internet that everybody thought their mic was broken too, and then they realized no, this is just a software thing.
We got to get legit so we can get a young Jamie.
That's what I'm saying, dude. That'd be sick if we had somebody who just knew all this shit. I'm learning a lot, but obviously I don't know.
Screw our degrees, dude. Let's just have a show in Batavia.
Let's do it.
I mean, that kind of is the goal of this for the whole region.
This is
so.
for you guys. This is for Batavia. This is for not just Batavia, but you know what I mean, the Western New York area. We want to get friends on here. Anybody wants to come up here, punch Zach in the face, I'm all for it. There's a lot of people. He's got a punchable face. I mean, a lot of people want to punch him in the face.
Bring some brews.
Yeah, there you go.
We could do it. We could do that like a segment, like they have bitch voice.
On
96.5. Yeah, punch Zach in the face. Dude, that would be so funny.
Dude, that really would. It's all right, Zach. Let's see what shot you can wear today.
That idea.
You're gonna have just what boxers have by the time they retire. All of them are just fried in their brain because years and years you'll just be wearing shots from.
How about the home plate umpire for the Red Sox Astros game today?
Mm-hmm.
He used to be a heavyweight spar.
No
and
shit.
He used to spar Mike. They were talking about today. He used to spar with Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield and all these guys. And one of the commenters made a comment. He was like, "Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to argue with him."
No, because needless to say, he could take a punch at the very worst, if not dish a mean.
Tyson.
Dude, Tyson though, he used to have partners that would come out and just he actually had trouble getting sparring partners. In his prime, because he would just knock out his guys so fast in sparring. Just dude, nobody can. This is Mike Tyson. He's got one of the hardest punches of all time, if not the hardest punch you ever have seen of all time. His sparring partners just it was hard to get guys that would be able to stay with him, and if they could, I mean, you pay him nicely. It's because come on, you're getting railed by Iron Mike Tyson.
Zach Galifianakis did pretty good. He wore a punch and he got
the
up.
hangover, yeah. He took a punch from Mike Tyson. I think he could sit out this one. Yeah, no, I hear you. But anyway, the whole point of today's podcast was, what I think it was about a week ago now, right? The Vegas shootings.
A week tonight.
So we thought that it brought up some interesting issues that we see in our culture. It brought back up the debate on gun control. It brought back up, that whole issue, mental health issues, and even some conspiracy issues. It brought back into it. One gunman, that whole type thing, that was great.
The age-old question in America for the last 60 years.
The false flags, all that fun stuff.
Interesting side note, Vinny actually called it. I mean, it's awful to say,
I'm not proud of it, and no, I'm not in on these shootings, because when you say you called it and then it happens literally that next week, not even.
It was Friday you called it.
Yeah, and it happens 2 days later. It looks like I'm in on it. I swear to God, the U.S. government, I want on the record right now. I have, I have witnesses where I was at this moment. I was, watching football at home, Batavia, New York. You can check my phone records, anything you need to do. I was not in on this shit, all right? But yeah,
we were
kind of predicted it.
We were driving to Buffalo on Friday to have lunch with some friends because I was supposed to be leaving for Pittsburgh.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace to that.
Yeah,
idea.
this isn't even a real
so anyway, we're on our way to Buffalo, and he just turns the radio down and he looks at me and he goes, "Dude, I think there's gonna be something again." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, I don't know, a shooting, something like 9/11. We haven't had something like that in a while, and the way everything's going in this country, I think it's just gonna happen again soon." And lo and behold, 2-3 days later, the deadliest shooting in U.S. history.
Yeah, I literally I wake up to a text Monday morning from him with an article from CNN and he just captions it. You called it, and I was just like, I'm not happy about this.
That's
at
how
all.
you heard about that.
I didn't know about it until I
didn't know.
saw that message. I was like,
yeah.
oh shit, and then I was reading it, and I actually knew a girl who was flying out to California and had a layover in Vegas, and she told me, yeah, that was the pilots were like letting them know as the flight was going. It's like, which they were kind of surprised they even let the flight get there because he was still considered an active shooter when they were flying there. But
you don't know what's going on.
Yeah, but I guess even the airport in Vegas, she was telling me, she's like, they like just totally like blocked off a whole part of it, like where you can normally see the Mandalay Bay, because I think that's where it was, right? Was it
Mandalay?
Yeah, the Mandalay
Bay Hotel, whatever it's called.
Yeah, well, either way, you could see it from that airport, and obviously they didn't want you to see it from where they were because, you know, there's a lot of dead bodies, a lot of injury, just horrible, horrible things to see. So they blocked it all off. But she actually had a quick turnaround because she was going to California and literally coming back that same, like, was in California for all of 7 hours.
Oh, she went to Cali. She wasn't going to Vegas.
No, that was where the layover was in Vegas. Okay. So same thing, though, on the way back, layover in Vegas. So she was in California for like 7 hours. Comes back, and a bunch of the people that were on that plane, like, were at the concert. She said you could see, like, their wristbands, and, like, she talked to some of them. And I was talking, and she was just like, yeah. They're like, oh, were you here too? And she was just like, no, but she's also, like, wasn't about to ask and be like, hey, were you in the shooting? And I guess one of them was saying, yeah, like, their husband or boyfriend or whatever got shot. And it's just like, and she sat right next to him. That's pretty crazy timing that she happened to be there and see all that. I'd be freaking out. Very sad. Very, very sad. But I thought I brought up an interesting point. You know, the debate of gun control came back up. And I think it's a very important issue to talk about, but I also feel as though our perspectives on this, obviously we're going to give our perspectives because this is our podcast, but I feel like that they're necessary because if we're noticing anything in like the media right now, it pushes for like this whole like we're seeing it watching sports, right? ESPN has become way more outspoken on social and political issues, which they've avoided in the past for, you know, good reason. Usually sports and politics, you like to keep them separate if you can. But obviously that was a race issue, but now they're going to comment on something like this as well. So I feel it's important that you don't just get one side of the story. I'm in no way, by the way, a conservative, but I have a tendency to disagree with what would be, I think, a more liberal perspective, which is like controlling guns on this issue. I don't think it's the answer.
Yeah,
personally.
I think,
and I don't own a gun. None of my parents own a gun. This is somebody who's literally shot a gun like a handful of times in his life. I'm one of the last people that should ever comment, you know, on like, I'm no expert by any means of guns. Like, you actually hunt and shoot guns. Like, I have no guns.
There's 15 guns about 10 feet right there.
Yeah, see, so you've been around them your whole life. So naturally people could say, so what I'm saying is like, I'm more objective than most people because I've never owned a gun, and I'm pro, you know, saying that this isn't a gun issue. This is a mental health.
Well, I think that was a great
issue.
way that you introduced this because that is exactly what me and you are really about, is trying to see past the crap.
Yeah.
Because that's all you get from the news now. Everybody's a fanatic, and that word fanaticism, you know, every time something like this happens, someone who generally thinks on the right has the same thing to say about it every time.
Oh, yeah.
And vice versa with the left. And what I've tried to do the last couple of years is separate myself from that and look at everything clearly. Right. Because, you know, it's the whole yin and yang thing. Things are this and that, male and female, good and bad, high and low.
Did you just assume my gender, dude? Really?
You're definitely a female. I can tell by your voice.
See, wow, by my voice. What's that supposed to mean, dude? Are you just what if I want to, you know, I identify as this table? I could totally do that. It's 2017. Don't you put labels on me?
I wouldn't put it past you because you're wearing a Yankees hat.
Yeah, I'm identifying as the New York Yankees for the rest of my life. Green Bay Packers,
I would respect
which
that.
had a great win today.
Oh my God.
But go ahead.
Here we go. I heard about it for 25 minutes.
The
Let's
Cowboys,
get it out. Just get it out.
The Cowboys can't stop
Get
Aaron
it out.
Rodgers. He's a god amongst mere mortals. I don't care what you say. Tom Brady is not the greatest player in the NFL. That is Aaron Rodgers. And a proof of that was the scramble that he had on, it might have been second or third down, where he got a huge first down, got out of bounds, got us into the red zone. That scramble, he literally fought off two guys tackling him, linemen, Brady can't do that part of it. That's the part that Tom Brady, he's not mobile. We watched Tom Brady in his prime, like in 03, get messed up by Nate Clemens. I believe that's who it was, who ran to the outside of the Bills, just rocked him. Like, he's not a mobile quarterback at all. Not to say he's not the greatest. I do think he's the greatest, but there's a difference between maybe the greatest like resume and the greatest talent. Rodgers is the greatest talent.
I get that. But I still think Bernie Kosar is definitely better than Aaron Rodgers.
Oh my God, we're talking about that might have been the last decent Browns quarterback. It was Bernie Kosar.
Brady Quinn.
Brady Quinn was an awful NFL quarterback. I loved Brady Quinn, but he was a terrible NFL quarterback. The Browns just they're terrible. Again, today they lost to the Jets. Literally the worst two teams in the league. I saw a tweet too. It was hilarious. It goes, if you watch the Jets versus Browns game today, a United States like military officer should show up to your house and thank you for your service. Because it's just like, just joke, be like, nobody should be tortured by watching that terrible of a football game. But anyway, we're getting off topic. Back to the whole gun control issue. So what we were saying is just like obviously you own guns, you know the safety of guns. Obviously, anytime I've ever touched a gun, the people that I've always been around people that are very, very like smart with their guns. Like, no, you hold it up a certain way, never point it at somebody, treat every gun as though they're loaded. Those whole things. Obviously, I don't know it as well as you guys, but I've always been I get nervous every time I hold one. It's just like knowing the power that's behind that, and if you're not careful, like,
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
Irreversible mistakes.
Are
will
you
be made.
like scared of guns, or were you like before you ever really held one? Were you scared?
Before
of
I ever
guns?
held one, yeah, I scared. Yeah, nervous is more very anxious. I would say very anxious. It's just like I don't want to. It's great when you actually shoot. It's like, okay, that is a sick feeling, shooting at a target. Like, there's nothing quite that'll get your blood pumping like doing that. But at the same time, it's also like, okay, somebody take this out of my hands because I don't know anything about the safety. Like, I don't want to know I want you to, like, somebody who knows what they're doing with this thing, like, take it from me, take care of it, because I don't want to be responsible for anything else. Because I just, you know what I'm saying? Irreversible mistakes can be made. Like, at the end of the day, that's a powerful weapon, which is very useful, and I believe everybody has the right to own it. Not everybody. I should correct that. If you're not a criminal, if you're not a felon, if you don't have a violent history record, if you don't, have any mental health, any record of mental health like problems for you, I believe those are very important distinctions.
And I agree with that, but I am a gun advocate. I don't think everybody should have, but I do tend to like you to take a more conservative stance. But here's the problem with that, because that's what I've been saying this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Is you shouldn't have, if you don't have a criminal record and you have a good psychiatric history, like, you should be able to get a gun. The Vegas shooter, he had neither of those things. He didn't have a criminal record at all. He seemed like a normal guy. He had no psychiatric history.
True.
So I mean that's the scary part about it, and it's just like, well, what do you do with that? And one of my buddies told me, he's a very, very smart guy, Ronnie Kleinback. He said it the other day. He said,
shout out to Ronnie Kleinback.
He said, this is America. If you're gonna, and he's a very liberal person. He says, you're always going to have shootings if you want freedom.
So that's what I was just gonna say. I was gonna say, people say, well, what's the solution? And there's a lot of liberal media that will come out and say, and I always find it hilarious because there's a lot of foreigners that comment on it, like the Trevor Noahs of the world. They have some legitimate arguments for real issues, but Britain's like gun laws are like way stricter than ours, so like they have a totally weird, different perspective on it. Here's my thing. Long story short, okay, the guy passed all those tests, right? In my eyes, he's an anomaly. He's the exception, not the rule. Unfortunately, it's going to happen. It's just a cruel reality of the world we live in. There are evil people, even if we can't detect them. There's murderers every day. There are psychopaths every day that kill for no reason whatsoever, or for whatever demented reason that they have. Now, is it unfortunate it was a mass shooting? Yes. But at the same time, I don't think it can necessarily be limited by taking our guns away. And here's the thing. For me, all you're doing when you take guns out, and again, this is somebody who I like to consider myself a moderate. I like to think that not one side has all the answers, and that there's, I probably lean more liberal on most, I have probably more liberal like stances on most issues, but in this one I don't agree that taking guns away at all is going to help. for a few reasons, but the main one for me is that all you're doing is taking guns away from good people, not the bad guys. Here's the thing. What did we learn with this war on drugs? And this is why I think they're relatable. The war on drugs, if we've learned anything, drugs are not that hard to get at all. I'm not recommending drug use. I'm just, it's reality, though.
Yeah.
Like, since Reagan declared this war on drugs in the 80s, if anything, drugs have skyrocketed throughout these last 30 years. Not gone down. Quite the opposite. They're doing a horrible job fighting that. So my point is if you want to go on the black market and get that, guns are just as prevalent on the black market. Like, you want to see, like, these automatics that some, drug gangs have brought in from, Mexico and smuggled elsewhere. My point is just like alcohol in the 20s with Prohibition, like, all these things have a black market. So bad people will get that gun. That guy who shot up Vegas, very sad, but if he wanted to get those guns, sure, you can make it harder by you can't buy a gun at all. It doesn't matter. If he finds the black market, he's going to get that gun. If he wants to kill that many people, he is going to do it.
He's going to find a pressure cooker. He's going to build one. He's going to build a pipe bomb. He's going to do something.
Like, I get the idea. It's like, okay, well, we can at least make it tougher on him. No, you're just taking it out of the right people's hands. Now, that's just my first point on it. The second thing is the whole principle, and this one's a little bit more controversial because it's not necessarily realistic today, but I think it's way more realistic than people really realize. The whole point of us having guns was the Founding Fathers said, in the event that the government no longer serves the needs of the people, it is the right of the people to overthrow that government. In other words, if they're trying to fight us, we have the right to have guns to fight the government back. Like, if they no longer serve our needs. Now, that does sound like anarchy and treason, sure, and we have seen in history that we have seen quote unquote, the South, succeed saying, hey, you're not serving our needs anymore. We're going to fight. So yeah, I'm not saying it would go down quietly, but we have a fundamental right to fight back if the government becomes tyrannical.
Yeah, here's the thing is, when you get into stuff like this, like, like free speech is another one up there.
Mm-hmm.
They wrote this document 300 years ago. But but it's still there. You can't take it away. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that their outlook on the world was 300 years ago. Correct. But it's like, all right, well, you know what? This is what they said, and you can make adjustments for it. And like free speech, like you don't have free speech. Like you can't, like Shank. What was it? The 1920s, right after World War I. You can't go in a movie theater and yell fire if there's not a fire.
Right. Like,
someone went to the Supreme Court over that. Like, there is a limit on it, and there should be a limit on guns. But exactly like you said. And I tend to think of myself as a liberal person with way more liberal viewpoints than conservative. But here's my question to liberals, because I have yet to see a liberal answer this with a satisfactory answer. Look at Chicago and Washington, D.C. You took all the guns away, and they have the 2 highest murder rates for any metropolis in the country. Let me repeat that. You took away the guns and said you can't have a firearm in city limits, and they have the 2 highest murder rates in the country. It's not any simpler than that. You can't give they get them from other people, which is the problem. You're saying you're telling the good people, hey, you can't do that, and the good person's not going to do that. Right. But the person who wants to go shoot the gangbanger that has a beef with them or whatever it is, they're still going to do that.
And this is why I say, like, the black market of drugs, and the and guns, like, are correlated, because you see, like, okay, why are these violent crimes having, like, these gang wars? They have their whatever turf issues, but a lot of them are selling drugs to, that's how they make their money in the black market. And as a result, they're bringing in guns. And the business is booming, guys. Like, that's just the world we live in. They haven't been able to fight them off since the 80s. Like, business is booming. And there's nothing they're going to be able to do to stop it. So all you're doing is taking guns out of the way of people who, like you're saying, good people that actually would follow the law. The people who don't care about the law and are the same people that are going to obviously would be the same people that are shooting up crowds of people. Because mass murder is a pretty big crime last time I checked. So they're not going to give a crap that this gun they obtain is illegal, because they're already about to do something that they can never, ever change.
It's like one of the provisions in the SAFE Act here in New York that Cuomo introduced. It says you can't have more than 7 rounds of ammunition in any of your firearms. 7 rounds of ammunition, including in the chamber and in the magazine. Mm-hmm. So if someone's going to go shoot up a gas station, they're going to say, oh, hold on, I can only put 7 bullets in here, so I'm going to put all the ones in my pocket. No, they're not going to listen to that. They're going to load it up with as many as they can.
Yeah, it's not going to stop it.
It doesn't exactly. And another good point is a lot of shootings happen in gun-free zones.
Yeah.
Concerts, schools, movie theaters, churches.
What did we just see? A concert. What did we see in Columbine? A school. What did we see in Aurora? That was a movie theater. Like, that's exactly.
Charleston was a church.
Yeah, there you go. Like, they don't care. It's an evil crime. It's horrific. It's so horrific they don't have boundaries. If they did, they wouldn't be shooting up mass people for no goddamn reason, or for even worse, religious reasons, extremist religious reasons, which I believe actually ISIS did take like ownership over this shooting.
They did.
I believe I heard that. I don't know that for sure. I'm pretty sure they did take ownership over.
Because
I
just read something today that said that there's no credible tie. Even
No.
if they say, they might be saying
they
it
can
just
claim
for
it, but it
publicity.
doesn't mean,
But
right.
yeah.
Like, because why wouldn't, if you're really hating America, like, why wouldn't you take credit for something like that? If you're fighting a war
Exactly.
with these people, like, yeah, we did it.
Yeah,
like,
we did that.
Instill fear. Kind of like how 9/11, but that one we know was up.
And
Assuming everything the media says is true, we know that was Al Qaeda. However,
we'll save that one for another day.
we'll save that. Yeah, that's a totally different debate because I don't buy that shit at all.
Me neither.
Oh my god. Anyway,
But here's the other big point for me is, aside from the Chicago, Washington, D.C. example, if this microphone stand is sitting right there, it's going to sit there for eternity unless me, you, or someone else comes in here and moves it.
right.
Now, if this microphone stand bashes you in your eye and just, it's not going to do that. I have to physically pick it up and bash it in your eye.
You're gonna have to do physics.
Same thing with the gun. Same thing with the gun. It's just going to sit there. It's just going to sit there. I have to pick it up, point it at you, and pull the trigger. Now, how do you? Okay, and people say, yeah, exactly. You it's a tool. Yes, it is a tool. But the way I look at guns is exactly what you said. There's an element of fear in it. I couldn't even tell you the first time I shot a gun because I've been shooting guns literally my entire life. I don't know, I was probably 3 or 4 when my dad first took me. Like, we used to go all the time, and we don't go as much anymore. But I'm still, I can disassemble a gun, clean it, and put it back together. Like, I can still definitely do all that stuff. And the first thing I always think of whenever I even pick up a gun is treat every gun as if it were loaded, in my dad's voice, because literally every time I shot a gun, probably for my first 10 years of my life.
That was the first thing I was told whenever I held a gun. Said treat every gun as it's loaded, never point it at somebody.
And there's been times where, like, me and my dad will be hunting, or we'll be out trap shooting. And when I was younger, it never happens anymore. But I would accidentally, not pay attention, and the barrel would be pointed at him, and he'd, smack it out of the way and be like, "What the hell is wrong?" And get in my face and yell at me.
And as he should.
And that sticks with you. I didn't mean to do it, and he knows I didn't mean to do it, but it's just reinforcing that in my mind.
Right.
And exactly like you said, I mean, like the other day, I was hanging out with my buddy Ron and his friend Josh. Josh owns the Firing Pin, which is a shooting range out here, just outside of town. Mm-hmm. And he was carrying it concealed. And I saw it, and I said something to him about it, and he pulled it out, and he, I watched him take the magazine out. I watched him unload the bullet in the chamber, and he gave it to me. But what did I do? I looked in the chamber to make sure there were no bullets in there. I looked in the magazine clip to make sure there was no magazine in there. Looked again in the chamber, and then I was like, all right. And then I turned around and pointed it like at the wall where nobody was.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just, it really isn't that hard. You just have to educate people.
Right.
With everything. I really think education is the key. Knowledge is the power to everything.
No, I agree with you. I don't see at this, like, to me, it's great in theory, right? Like, okay, we'll just take all these guns away. Nobody will ever have a chance to get a gun, and all these shootings won't happen. In theory, sure, that sounds great. It's not realistic at all. Not given the fact of how many guns are already here. Not every gun's going to get reported. Like, even, like, say they just decided we're going to take every single gun. That, like, okay, rifles or, because I know a big issue isn't even that they're trying to take all the guns away. It's just like this idea of like assault rifles, or you should really only kind of have a handgun for like self-defense, right? Like still though, it's just like even rifles. It's just like hunting rifles. Like there's just so many different.
I don't know.
ways
I don't know where I stand on that, because you can consider. People say, like, okay, you shouldn't have semi-automatic weapons. Like one of our teachers, one of my favorite teachers of all time, Mr. Volpe, he used to say that there's that there's a difference between, okay, so semi-automatic is you pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out.
Right.
You pull the trigger once, another bullet comes out.
So as
boom,
fast as you're
boom,
shooting it out, it's
boom,
gonna come
boom.
out. Right.
Fully automatic is you just hold the trigger down and it.
Right.
A and then there's other kinds of action. There's pump actions, which is you see on most shotguns. You got to pump it to shoot, pump it to shoot.
Right.
There's break actions where the barrel literally like breaks and you load it in through there. And the argument is that those weapons have a lower firing rate and therefore are safer and easier to subdue than a semi-automatic or fully automatic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I could take you in there right now and I could show you my 22, not really my hunting rifle, like a smaller animals like rabbits and foxes and stuff. That's what you hunt with the 22.
Mm-hmm.
It's a semi-automatic, but it looks like a hunting rifle. And I have a banana clip. Well, I had a banana clip that could fit 30 rounds in there because it's not legal to have anymore.
Right.
That thing's it'll do the same thing as an AR-15. It just looks different, but people say that's okay because and it's just like no, it's the same weapon. It just looks different, right. And the bullet is bigger on the AR-15. But the whole firing one bullet principle, it's just not.
Yeah. See, that was the other interesting too. Is I believe the guy had an automatic, didn't he? I
think he had a bunch of weapons.
Yeah,
he
had like
weapons.
10 different rifles they found. Like he had a ton of weapons, but I think there was some weird laws in Vegas where you actually can, like, it's illegal to buy an automatic.
Oh yeah,
it's the. I mean, I get it. That's like there's reasons why it's Sin City, man. There's like everything that's illegal everywhere else. It's just all legal.
Nevada is one of the most gun lenient states in the country.
Yeah, well, clearly, if you can buy an automatic, like where else in the country can you buy an automatic?
That's why Dan Bilzerian loves it out there.
Yeah.
Have you seen his gun collection?
Insane. He also seen. Never mind.
Shout out to the baddest man on the planet, Dan Bilzerian.
Oh man, but anyway,
we'd love to have you on someday, brother.
Yeah, that would be. We would make it for sure, because I would just want to go on like cruise with him with all the freaking.
Oh my God.
Chicks.
Yeah, you know what? Can we just come hang out with you? We don't even need to do a podcast here. We'll just come hang out with you. But here's my thing is.
Throw a couple mil my way,
So what I've been trying to do the last year is. Okay, even everybody has viewpoints. Everybody has beliefs that they adhere to and that they say no, this has to be right. Even when it comes from logic,
right.
And then they stop.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been trying to do the last year, and I'm not great at it, but I'm getting a little better at it, is so following my logic, following my feelings, and arriving at a conclusion, and then backtracking and saying, okay, what are the angles on which this conclusion could be wrong? And I think, and that's the biggest problem I think in America right now, especially with this whole Trump thing, is you have liberals just shouting one thing, Republicans shouting the other, and it just doesn't get anywhere. Here, sorry to interrupt, but here's my thing to you, because I think it's pretty clear where we both have a very similar stance on this. Actually, you could probably say the same stance with a little bit of difference. But can there be something done? Because I definitely do think something has to be done to deter this stuff, and I wish that I think education is the key. But there are going to still be those 5, 6, 7% of people that are just evil. They're psychotic. And it doesn't matter how much education you give them because they're emotional. They can't handle it emotionally. They can't handle the world emotionally. So my question to you is, can we do something? Because I don't think that taking guns away is the answer, but I hope that there's an answer that we can stop stuff like this, because this does need to come to a stop.
Yeah, see, the thing for me is the best way that I think you can stop it is just hope to God that, like, there's no way you're going to be able to completely eradicate it, and this small, like, 3 or 4% that that could sneak through are the same percentage that are already doing the killings now. Like, I don't think that they can necessarily have been stopped. Again, unless you see it, like I said, unless you see it in a mental health screening, you'd think, okay, this guy's dangerous, or he might have been watched on the FBI's Most Wanted, or somewhere in the family tree there was some psychosis that might have existed and been diagnosed. Like, how are you going to be able to stop it? I don't have the answer. I don't know. I would love to see, but I do know that taking guns away isn't what's going to do it.
Like the Adam Lanza, the guy from Newtown who shot up the schools. Like, yeah, okay. Just hearing the stories about people that knew him and his family, he should not have had access to a gun.
Yeah.
He should not have had access to a gun.
Mental health screening, background check, that would have prevented him from getting a gun.
Exactly, but
as it should have.
But this Vegas guy, I mean, a lot of the times it would. A lot of the times it would.
Right.
I mean, think about it, guys. And gun advocates say, "Oh no, it's all right. You shouldn't have to go through all these things. It's in the Constitution." Guys, you go through background checks for a job.
Right.
Like, if you go through background checks for a job, shouldn't you have to go through a background check to purchase a firearm?
If we want to talk about, like, rights being violated, like, how many times do you see somebody make a bold, like, political, like, statement? We'll use even Tim Allen for an example. He was an outspoken, like, Trump supporter, right? but then gets fired. Totally gets his job taken. Why? Because the network said, we don't agree with that. We're not endorsing that. You're out of here. Well, you'd think, isn't that a violation of freedom of speech? Well, no, because they're paying you, and you agreed in a contract that you would adhere to their terms. So, no, screw you. So it's just like, you really want to get into, like, rights being infringed. Like, there's an example. It's just like, well, maybe, like, isn't that a right being infringed? Well, according to the United States government, no, actually it's not. That's not a violation of freedom of speech because you agreed to those terms. Again, what was he going to do? If you don't agree to those terms, you don't get the job. So, but, that's my whole point. It's just like, yeah, the whole, like, violation of, like, rights. I don't know, man. It's just, it's such a weird issue, Like, there's no way you can completely eradicate it. I think it's just an evil that's going to exist in this world, and there's no way to get rid of it. That's unfortunate. Unless you just completely get rid of every insane person in this world, which, I mean, how the hell are you going to do that? I think the best thing we can do is reduce it. I have no solution that I've been able to come up with or think that we could totally eradicate it. There's only ways to reduce the issue.
Have you ever heard of Switzerland's kind of stance on guns?
No.
So in Switzerland, it's, I don't want to say law. It might be a law. But I know it's like 80, 90, or like it might even be like a 95, 100% of their men are obligated to join the military service upon like becoming a male or becoming an adult, whatever their age is, 18, 20, 21.
Right.
And after their service, every person is given like a gun, like to have for life. And Switzerland has like one of the lowest murder rates in the world. So that's exactly my thing with education. I mean, it's not gonna be something that's gonna happen by next year. But I think it could be a generational thing where if we start to implement this and show everybody, have everybody know about guns. I'm not saying everybody has to shoot a gun. I'm not saying that everybody has to go do these things. But like police officers should come to schools and talk to people about guns and show and tell them things.
Right.
You know what I mean? Gun experts should do that should be something that's pushed into our society because that. I really do think that the education, if you educate people on what it is, and how to safely use it.
The other side of the coin is people have to want to be educated on it because obviously you only get whatever you want to know about it. Like we could have people come into a classroom and talk about it all day, but if half the class doesn't really give a shit, like most topics, then they might not. But I get what you're saying. I agree with you. It's important. I think it should be done. It will help reduce this issue. I just don't think there's a way to
it happens all the time.
You see, not in one way.
There's stories of people, accidental shootings. These kids' parents went away and, they got drunk and they decided to play with the guns and someone got shot. Like, dude, I would never in a million years think of doing that just because I hear my father's voice. Treat every gun as if it were loaded. Watch where you're pointing the barrel. All that stuff. Like, dude, I still, get on edge when I show people my guns because I'm, watching them to be like, and I know there's nothing in there. I know there's not a bullet in there. But I'm still on edge and I'm still watching them. And even my dad,
healthy. It's honestly healthy to feel that way.
Vinny's been my best friend in life for 18 years now, since we were 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And he's literally like a sixth son to my parents. My parents love him to death. And he watched our house when we went on vacation about 2 months ago for a week. He stayed here and everything. What did my dad do? He packed my guns up and he took them to my grandpa's just because he didn't, he trusts Vinny, but he just didn't want, he didn't know if you're having somebody over or if something were to happen. I mean, that's
just being safe.
Yeah, that's a responsible gun owner to go do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
He's just being safe. That's all he is. I didn't even know he did any of that.
I didn't know he did that either.
I wasn't looking for guns around here, but
yeah,
you get my point. I get your point. He's just being why just take every precaution necessary?
Yeah.
Every precaution.
Because, that if he gets that phone call, well, then he's going to get in trouble. And
oh, well, yeah, they're his guns.
It's his gun, his house.
You would
be
in
too.
trouble, obviously. But, yeah, he just gets it because it's well, why'd you leave the gun?
Yeah, so he was just like, we're not even going to.
Yeah.
We're not even going to mess with that.
But, yeah, no, I hear you, man. It's very sad, everything that happened there in Vegas. Very, very sad. I'm sorry, for anybody who lost, a life there. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible, but at the same time, to call for the end of guns, it's just, it's just too convenient, right? That it's just, you know what I mean? Something horrible happens, and that's the first thing people want to hear. Like somebody like Hillary Clinton who tweets out Could you imagine if they had suppressors, how many more people would have been killed? I was just like, are you kidding me? And here's the thing. I don't own a gun. I've heard a gunshot with a suppressor. Just YouTube the damn thing. My roommate, actually, shout out to John Tudor, made a very good point when it came to this. He goes, there's a reason why they're actually called suppressors, not silencers. People like to call them silencers, but they're called suppressors. Because they're not quiet. He said they're quieter, but they're not by any means like super, super like quiet. He said you could still hear them.
Oh, yeah.
He said people would still hear them. And here was my thing. It was like, okay, let's assume for the sake of argument that she was right and you can't hear the bullet at all. Like, even though that's not real, let's pretend like that is. Let's assume that that's true. You don't think when people are going to see, I don't know, people dropping around them, and they're bleeding, and it's clear they have a gunshot wound in their head or their back, that, oh shit, somebody's getting shot? Like, you don't think people are going to start yelling and screaming, running anyway? Like that made no sense.
Fanaticism.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous argument that was illogical to begin with.
And that's the biggest thing.
I don't even own a gun, and I know that.
That's the biggest thing that I see. And I'm not saying it's because of Donald Trump. I'm just saying since the events happened and he got elected and he's in this position of power, everybody is way more fanatical, way more emotional. People on the left, people in the middle, people in the center. And it's like, all right, guys, we need to chill out here, and we need to think about these things. And that's my problem with ideologues is they always see the same result for every time. Like, I'm not going to name names, but I know people that every time there's a shooting like this, or every time a black man or a black woman is killed by a white officer, they have the same viewpoint every single time.
Yeah.
I know people on the other end of the spectrum that have the same viewpoint every single time. And it's like, guys, they're not the same event. It's impossible. It's impossible for there to be the same result in this. Look at this. We're in the same room. We're sitting 2 feet away from each other. I'm going to drop this. We just saw that 2 completely different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, drop it on your computer.
Well, we both saw that part.
Is it still running?
No, it's right. Okay. Fine. We're good.
But we saw the same thing from right here in 2 different ways. Now, it's 2 different events. Yeah. You have to look at it like this. Where's the result? You have to look 360. You can't just have blinders and say, nope, it's got to be this, it's got to be this.
Well, the sad thing about at least with the police brutality thing is sure, it's absolutely a real issue. There's racism that obviously still exists, and we're not denying that. I know you believe in that there's still racism. Well, I'm pretty sure you still believe that there's racism and police brutality. I mean, I think it's ignorant to not think that still exists. Anybody who says it doesn't exist, that's just, you're not paying attention. You're just not educating yourself on anything. But with that said, the people who think that this is also like, I don't like common, I guess would be the right word to say. Like, this is like 5% of like police cases. Like many like, the overwhelming majority of cases with police officers go properly. Like, they do their job. Like, yeah, there's profiling, there's racial profiling, absolutely, and that is an issue that needs to be addressed. But like the way that, again, the liberal media has pushed this up to be is almost like it's an overwhelming problem. Like, even in the NFL, it's just like, yeah, no, I'm all for equality. And yeah, it should be an issue that should be fought on. I agree with you. But with that said, it's just like, this also isn't the majority of, like, police. Like, so to demonize, like, and that's the problem I've gotten out of it. It demonizes all police officers. Like, it really does. Like, people hate the police over this. It's just like, dude,
I saw something today about these
the majority
4
of police
officers in California.
Yeah. 2
of them are white, 2 of them are black. They raised $40,000 to buy this kid a car because this kid that they knew somehow, he was 19, he had to walk every day on the highway, and this kid was black. You didn't see that anywhere. No. You know what I mean?
Because good news, good heartfelt stories don't sell. Watch the media. Always don't. I've preached this on other the First New podcast. I will continue to say this until the end. Do not ever just watch Fox News, CNN. Don't ever just take what they say at face value and be like, that's it. They're pushing an agenda every time because that's what gets ratings. That's what gets them money. Money makes the world go around. They don't care. What half of these places will do is they will actually tell you a lot of false facts in their stories. And yeah, they're obligated to eventually tell you the truth, but they won't tell it to you right away. Because the truth isn't what's getting out there right away. It's about getting the story out there and apologizing for what was wrong later. People just see that, see the first part. They'll be like, oh, that was
Denzel Washington had a great... I remember you brought that to my attention.
Yeah.
Denzel Washington did a great interview a few months ago. And
yeah.
I forgot what the reporter asked him, but they asked him something, and he was just like, see, this is the problem, is you guys just want to get a story out. Like, you don't do any quality work.
No.
That's
lazy.
a bad
He
paraphrase.
said the media was lazy, essentially.
Yeah, it's a
You guys
bad
are lazy.
paraphrase, but go look it up for yourself. I mean, it's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Don't watch CNN. Don't watch Fox. Come to the spot. Get your news at the spot with Zach and Vinny all the time.
No, yeah. So, in all seriousness, what my suggestion is and what I've tried to do is, okay, watch CNN, watch Fox, watch MSNBC, listen to conservative radio, listen to liberal radio, look at, the BC, what is it, the BCC? BBC, thank you. Look at all of them, see what all of them are saying, and realize, okay, the truth is probably somewhere in here. They all have a similar story, but probably aren't all giving the same exact facts. Look at what they're saying and really try and figure out the truth for yourself and try and understand the perspective they're coming from and probably what actually happened. Because the truth is not exactly what they printed on the paper word for word. It is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, things aren't this or that. They're this and that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
the problem with today. People that say it's either this or that. You're either right or you're wrong. It's like, what happened to the gray? Why has it got to be black or white? There's absolutely gray areas.
There's no such thing as black or white. It's
right.
Black, white, and then millions and shades of gray.
Yeah. I just don't. I just don't get how people can take those stances where it's just like, no, it has to be conservative, it has to be liberal.
Well, first, and I'm not saying
It's
this in a bad way.
what?
It's people that.
You really think you're right on? They're right on every single issue? No, they're just trying to contradict the other side. They're pinning teams. This is why I've been saying we need more than two political parties for the longest time. People actually need to look at other political parties, not even if you believe in them necessarily, just because it's like we're getting more voices out there. You're getting more ideas, so you aren't having just a this and that side.
I think it's an emotional response,
Yeah.
and I think it's hard for people to get over that emotional response.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do it. I mean, I used to be that guy, I mean, I've been super into history and politics my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And up until I was like 18, 19, when I got out of high school and went to my freshman year in college, I always had, it's X, it's X, it's X, it's this, it's this, it's this. And then I don't really know what happened, to be honest, but I remember just going into my sophomore year of college, like that summer in between my freshman and my sophomore year, I just realized the world is not like that. And I can't even give you an example. I don't know if it was like all the history I read at Allegheny or some of my own experiences or just what I started to pay attention more to. Or, honestly, it was probably a combination of all three. Going away definitely had an impact, because you go talk to people from different areas and you see, their viewpoints, because that, it's super interesting to get in a friendly argument with one of your friends.
A debate.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, wow.
Yeah.
I never really thought about it like that before. Like, that person believes that just as much as I believe this.
So who's right, or are we both wrong? And then it helps you see common ground. The thing for me is always having an open mind. Listen to what they're saying. Try and understand their viewpoint from, trying to understand their life, too, because why they would have that perspective versus, why I would have my perspective from my upbringing. And then figure out, what's the best solution for the common good of all, because you're not going to satisfy every single person, because we're all unique. We're not, robots. We all have our own, not every issue is going to benefit us.
But there is one truth in the universe.
The Sox suck?
No, Bernie Kosar is better than Aaron Rodgers.
See, there's nothing he could say tonight that would make me mad about how the god that is Aaron Rodgers just killed the Cowboys again. He did it again. You gave him too much time again. You did it again.
I don't even care about football.
He's a bad man, to quote the great Stephen A. Smith. That's probably the only good thing that guy... No. A lot of people hate Stephen A. Smith. I don't mind him. But, man, that's the best thing that guy's ever said.
Did you see what he was saying about the NBA basketball game, the All-Star game?
He hated it. He hates the format.
Well, the new one. Yeah, right. So, I mean, we got a few minutes, right?
Yeah.
So, because do we want to be done in the hour? Because we got the camera.
Yeah, probably.
I think we got another 15 minutes.
Okay, we'll wrap it up.
But yeah, tell me about that, because I want to know about that.
Oh, about the NBA?
Because I just saw his video, what he said about it, and I looked into it a little bit.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of what he was saying about it. So all that was, what happened is the NBA changed its format. It used to be, the West had their All-Stars, right? The Western Conference versus the Eastern Conference. They had their All-Star teams. And you would pick the best players in the East and the best players in the West. Well, they just totally threw that out now. They're saying, no, we're just going to take the best players. We're going to have two captains, and they're going to pick teams. So you can have somebody from the Warriors and the Cavaliers plan an all-star team this year. You can have LeBron and Curry theoretically on the same team. or LeBron and Durant theoretically on the same team if they're not both captains. I would imagine they're each going to be captain, LeBron and Durant, but nonetheless, the point is now they get to pick teams. And the whole idea is the NBA is thinking, the All-Star game has taken a lot of flack, and the All-Star game itself has taken a lot of flack. It's just not very competitive, okay? These guys don't play defense. They're incredibly high scoring. It's more of like just a showcase of skills. It's not really, like I said, it's not competitive. The final scores are like 160 to 100. It's like ridiculous scoring. There's no defense ever played. And a lot of people like the three-point contest and the dunk contest even more than the actual All-Star game itself. So I think what the NBA is trying to do is be like, hey, maybe this will get more viewership for it. Maybe this will spice it up a little bit. Stephen A. Smith's whole thing was he goes, it's not going to make a difference if the players themselves don't try and actually compete. And I agree with him there. It's just like if the players still don't give a crap, it doesn't matter how you make the format. They need to. But at the same time, I can understand why they aren't going 100%. Like, you play 82 games a year. They are cutting back-to-backs out a little bit, back-to-back games. But, it's a long season. It's taxing, especially if you're a guy like a LeBron who's been to like 7 straight NBA finals, and you start your season in what? I think they start late October, early November, and the NBA finals run into June. That's a long season, especially for a guy like him who's done it 7 straight years. Like, that's impressive, but also it's very taxing on his body. So if you get a few days off where role players, guys who aren't all-stars, get all this time off, they actually get a legitimate 3 or 4 day break. Well, these guys aren't getting that kind of break. They get a couple days. They don't want to get hurt or injured in this all-star game. It's an exhibition. It doesn't mean anything other than to the fans who want to see it. So why do they care? It's an issue. Like, how are you going to motivate them to play this game at the same time? You know what I mean? You got to motivate them to actually want to play the game. But at the same time, I understand why they don't want to go all out.
Yeah, it's lax. It's lax.
Yeah,
it's
they're trying not to get hurt. That could hurt their team. They're also trying to, actually get some rest because it's a long season.
Which I think I think it's smart that football does their pro ball at the end of the season because it's like, all right, this doesn't really mean anything. Well, now they do it right before the Super Bowl, right? They move that.
So the two teams that are in the Super Bowl, though, like their Pro Bowlers obviously do not play in that game because that would
the Pro Bowl is way more important than the Super Bowl.
Yeah, but that game's taken a lot of heat too for the same reasons, guys. Just quality of the game. It's more that people really just don't care to watch it. It's just
why do you think baseball? Because baseball's All-Star game is like. A lot of people watch that, and it's not really a hated game. I mean, I think something to do with it is pitchers usually only pitch an inning or two. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's not like you got Clayton Kershaw out there for 7 innings. You know what I mean? He's going to start the inning, and then you got another pitcher and another pitcher. Everybody kind of gets their work.
Right. So the thing with baseball is it actually went through a time. I mean, baseball in general, it's just viewership's down, but that game itself used to be not looked at. It went through the same problem. People weren't watching it as much. And then they added in the incentive of, if the AL wins, they get home field advantage in the World Series, or at the NL. They added that. The winner gets home field advantage in the World Series. Doesn't matter if you have the best record. If the Dodgers went to the World Series, the AL won it this year. So the Dodgers theoretically had the best record, right? Say they go to the World Series. They won't get home field advantage in a best of 7. That's a big deal when you look at something like last year. Cubs had the best record in the league. They had a better record than the Indians, but the Indians had Game 7 at their place. Now, granted, the Cubs overcame it and still won, but it's just that's still how the series, that rainout doesn't happen. Cleveland very well could win that game. They got the crowd on their side. I think
the place exploded when Davis hit that home run.
Oh, Raj.
I couldn't imagine being there.
I was going nuts watching that. I was rooting for the Indians. I'm not going to lie. I was rooting.